Hello, and welcome to the actual first preview of the podcast of Behind the Guardrail. I'm here today with P2W, Paradox Pro Wrestling's owner and professional wrestler, Adam Bueller. Adam Bueller, it's nice to have you here, man.
Hey, thanks.
So, would you mind giving us everybody here a quick introduction to yourself?
Yeah, sure. Basically, I've been, like you said, I've been wrestling for, owning Paradox Wrestling. Been wrestling for about 8 years. Paradox Wrestling, I've been running for, even though there hasn't been very many shows, roughly about 2 years. Originally from the Ohio area, now I'm out of the Indiana area. So, basically doing what I try to get myself out there, I guess, just like everybody else.
Hey, man, that's great. So let's just get right into it, What really actually got you into wrestling?
I've always been way into wrestling. Honestly, as far back as I can remember, there isn't a single period in my life that I think about where I can actually remember anything from back then where I wasn't just completely obsessed with wrestling. Just ever since I was a little kid, it was always really, really big on Hulk Hogan and Bret Hart, and you always used to pretend wrestle on the bed and everything, and get yelled at by my parents for jumping on the bed and all that, just like every kid did. I don't know, it's just one of those things, I guess. I never grew out of it, and I just knew that was what I always wanted to do. I mean, granted, I'm not doing it as a profession or for a career or anything, but I'm having fun at the level that I'm doing it at. Not very many people can say that they actually get to do something they've always wanted to do their whole life, so that's good.
That's awesome, man. Hey, I always did the same thing, definitely as a kid. I always was getting in trouble, not only, with my parents. Like, I used to go to daycare and do all that stuff with all my friends all the time, too. So I think we've all been there at some point in time. Not only was there, when we were kids and we were doing that, it was kind of different than what happens now. I mean, now we see a lot of people that are into this backyard wrestling stuff. Did you ever yourself participate in anything like that?
Many years ago, me and a couple of people one other person that still wrestles now, but there was 4 of us total that got into the business together. We used to do it. Out as just us being dumb, mostly just for fun, making ourselves laugh. We would mostly just do promos and have dumb matches with each other. But we never really did anything real serious until toward the end of it, when we were about to start getting into wrestling legitimately. Some of the stuff we were doing was little, definitely look like kind of now stuff we probably shouldn't have been doing. But we never went really far with it.
All right, well, let's get into when you legitimately got into wrestling. Who were you trained by?
I was, originally, in the summer of 2003, me and my good friend who wrestled named Jay West, he doesn't wrestle anymore, we originally went to IWA in, was Evendale, Ohio, near Cincinnati. We went there originally for school. That was our first experience with wrestling not on TV. So we tried that up for a little bit. We didn't last at it very long. We both just kind of thought, this is a lot harder than what we thought it was going to be. This isn't at all what we thought it was going to be like. So after about a week or 2, we gave it up. And it wasn't until one of our other really good friends went to a different wrestling school and started getting into it and wrestling matches that we decided to give it another try through where he went to. Back then it was called Dayton Championship Wrestling. I think now it's called Dynamic Championship Wrestling or something like that. The training wasn't great. It was pretty much just the very, very basic stuff. And then, from there we ended up starting there in the beginning of 2004. And we went on that training until about spring of 2005. I was able to get into Shark Boys wrestling school in actually the same building that I originally went to for HWA, and we did his training there for I think it was about can't remember exactly the time frame, but that's where I learned how to do everything the correct way, and that Shark Boy is the one that I credited to my trainer.
All right. Well, a lot of people when they think of Shark Boy, obviously they think of like a comedic character, but obviously, I mean, you quote him as your trainer, and he's helped out a lot of different people. You want to shed some light on the different side of Shark Boy that a lot of people don't know?
Well, I mean, he knows. I mean, he knows the business. I mean, he ran his own gimmick for a little while. It did very well. And then, but I mean, he's a guy. He really knows everything. How to do everything the right way. A lot of guys in that area, in the Southern Ohio area, really look up to Boy. Actually, a lot of those older HWA guys, and even the guys coming up through HWA. After he had already got himself established and was in WCW and NA and various places like that. He's an excellent trainer. He taught me very well. He taught a lot of people, close friends of mine, very well. Got us, started in the right path in the wrestling business. And I mean, he really knows his stuff. He's a fantastic wrestler. He's an amazing trainer. He's a very good businessman. Just really, really smart guy. Doesn't get enough credit in the business for exactly how much that he knows.
Well, you mentioned earlier, and I kind of want to go back to it, that when you first broke into wrestling, that it was kind of a culture shock to you. I mean, how much of a culture shock was it?
Well, it was pretty much just not knowing what to expect exactly. I mean, I went into it thinking, okay, well, we're going to learn how to do all this cool things. I mean, I had an idea of, the various documentaries and things like that. But when I actually got into it, it was for people who don't know about it, the backstage side of pro wrestling is a completely different world. Policies and courtesies that you would expect to apply in everyday life don't always necessarily apply in pro wrestling and vice versa. So getting used to all that was weird at first, but now a lot of that has kind of carried over into my personal life. Just some of the I guess the language of pro wrestling and mannerisms and courtesies and things like that. And it's kind of funny now to see the look on some people's faces when they don't understand certain pictures I make, or when they have to ask me what certain things that I say mean. But yeah, it's very, very different. It was a little bit of an adjustment getting used to it. But I mean, overall, honestly, I couldn't really imagine how my life would be without having all that stuff anymore. It's really bizarre.
Well, I kind of want to ask you one thing, because it's something that always gets to me, because as you know, and maybe not everybody else that's listening to this knows, I've been around wrestling for a while, and I know a lot of people in the business, and one of the things that gets to me is how certain language is used, especially by the smarks, and a lot of the smarks think they know the language, but what do you think of when you hear someone speak it?
I'm in like the context, like if I hear a fan speak it, or if I hear like another wrestler, or
as a fan, a smart, somebody who, like I said, they think they know the business, and they think they know like all the terms and everything, but they aren't quite using them the right way.
When I hear stuff like that, I mean, there are some times when people have it right, but a lot of the time they have the right idea about it, but it's not always using the right context, I guess. And it's just kind of funny to me sometimes to hear people who, I guess, it's almost like they're trying to impress you because they know, it's like they think they know things they're not supposed to know. So I mean, they kind of toss some of the lingo out at you, thinking that you'll be impressed by it. And a lot of times I don't want to say that they make themselves sound dumb or anything like that, but it's kind of like when. It's kind of like in elementary school or in middle school when like a little kid hears here's a dirty word first, like one of the weird obscure ones, and they don't quite know exactly what it means, but they think they know the context of it, and they try using it and have it completely wrong. And I just kind of look at it like that. It's just kind of funny.
I definitely can understand that. Speaking of yourself and wrestling becoming an extension of yourself, you went for a long time by the name The Sickness, and now you've picked up on Professional. Was that something that came through as part of a gimmick that you developed, or that come from an extension of yourself?
Well, the sickness part, that's actually what I used to go by when I did start wrestling, and I thought it would be such an awesome wrestling name when I first started. And about a year into it, I realized this was the dumbest wrestling name ever, and I need to change it really bad. So, and Shark Boy for his shows, he always had his students by their actual names. My friend Jimmy that used to do backyard wrestling with us. He did Shark Boy's first class, and so did two other friends of mine, Dustin Thomas and Jay West. He had Jared wrestle as his legitimate name, Jared West. Jimmy was wrestling under the name T.W. James at the time. He had him go by his real name, Jimmy Turner. And Dustin, he always just went by Dustin Thomas anyway. So I kind of saw it more as as an opportunity to actually get away from that name that I hated so much. That was my own decision to go by. And since I have a very lackluster ring name for my real name, he suggested to me, well, what if you go by Adam Bueller? Which is just adding on two letters, and I liked it. So from that point on, I started going by Adam Bueller. The unprofessional part, that actually came out of an inside joke with me and Joseph Schwartz. I can't remember the exact origins of it, but I would always get made fun of in the locker rooms by him for being unprofessional, and I've always, anybody who's me, as the most professional guy anywhere I go. So it's just kind of like an ironic name that he gave me. So I just told him I was going to start introducing myself to people as unprofessional Adam Bueller, and so I just started going with that for wrestling now, and it's just an inside joke, I guess, that got taken to that length, I suppose.
Joseph Schwartz is definitely one of those guys, and he's a fun guy to be around, and I definitely see how that might have come about. A lot of people here don't really know your name, and possibly because, you wrestle in the Midwest area, which is kind of a dying place for wrestling. It used to be a booming place. If you think back to the years, you can think back to Dick the Bruiser's promotions that ran here in Indianapolis for many, many years. And, it was a big place, but now it's kind of died down, especially with the death of IWA Mid-South. What if you were to name one promotion? I know you mentioned HWA already. What one promotion in the air do you think could take over the IWA Mid-South persona?
The only one, it's kind of an obvious decision, which I'm gonna say, place I started wrestling for recently, IWA-Midwest, which is promoted by Joey Grunge from Iowa. They run in the same area that IWA Mid-South ran in. They've done 2 shows so far. They've been really solid shows. This one actually was Indie Mania. It had the CZW heavyweight champion Masada, Drake Younger, Christian Abel, Jack Thriller, Jimmy Jacobs, the NWA Midwest X Division champion Oliver Kane. Just had a lot of really, really good guys on the show. Axel Rotten was on the show. Ian Rotten was on the show. So if anybody's going to take the place of IWA Mid-South, that's pretty much the obvious decision on that. But as far as the places, I don't really know of. I only know of the places that I've sold for, but I've heard a lot of really awesome things about AAW in Chicago, Resistance Pro Wrestling in near Chicago. I've heard is a really awesome show to check out. Infinity Pro I've got coming up this weekend. That's a good one to check out. Price of Glory, and again, one of my favorite places to wrestle for. FEW and Fort Wayne. There's a lot of pretty good places out there. A lot of them, they're few and far between from the ones that I would say aren't worth checking out. But there are a lot of really good ones out there. You just kind of have to dig around and look for them and what's out there.
All right. Well, yeah, you had mentioned, some of the people on the IWA Midwest show that are working there. And one thing I really wanted to mention about you and ask you about is, even though you've worked for all these smaller promotions, you've worked with a lot of big names like Jimmy Jacobs and Sami Callihan. Is there one person that you would say that you've worked with on a smaller show and you would really like people to check out their work maybe on those promotions?
Like another guy that people wouldn't have necessarily heard of.
No, like a bigger name that like say Jimmy Jacobs, because Jimmy Jacobs has done a lot of work for Price of Glory Wrestling, and I know that a lot of people don't know that's basically his home promotion, and people have not seen his work there. Is there anybody who's a big name like say Jimmy Jacobs and POG that has a home promotion that's a smaller promotion that they work at that you've done work with that you really think people should check out?
For the places that I've worked for, not necessarily. I mean, for when I was wrestling for Underground, there were some bigger guys coming through there a little bit more regularly. Billy Rock was coming up there a couple of times. Jimmy Jacobs was there pretty often. Ian Rotten was there a lot. Who else in there? Sammy Callahan was coming through there a lot back then. That was when he was located in the Midwest, though. No, there's not really any places I wrestle for that have any bigger names outside of IWA Midwest that would really have any of those places as a home promotion.
I got one last quick question. You know, we're basically kind of going over the beginnings of your career here, so I want to ask one last big question. If there was any one thing that you could change of your early years, like one thing that you could go back and change that you may think have changed your career, what would it have been?
Honestly, it'd be hard to narrow down just one thing. I would like to change. There's a lot of things that if I could go back and do over, I would definitely have done. Sticking with HWA for foremost would have definitely. I really wish that I would have done that. Just because I would have learned everything the right way from the beginning much sooner. I would have been in a much better area, surrounded by a better group of wrestlers than what I came up through. I basically just would have had a better start overall. I honestly think. I do kick myself. Well, not so much anymore, just because so much time has passed. But for a while, I was really kicking myself a lot, for not thinking through that. I guess a second. Well, it's not really something I wish I could have done differently. I can still do, but actually getting the right look for pro wrestling and not looking like I just escaped a concentration camp for my entire career, I guess would have been a lot more beneficial. That's something I wish I would have started doing a long time ago, especially when I had first started. Because I mean, wrestling is it's a visual business. I mean, it doesn't matter how much better or worse I am than somebody standing next to me that's 6'6", 300 pounds of solid muscle. Most places are gonna pick they're gonna pick the muscular guy over me if it had to pick between us to use on a show almost 9 times out of 10. So I mean, that's something I definitely wish that I would have dedicated myself to a little better, rather than just kind of being complacent with my build and just, for lack of a better word, just not really caring, more or less.
All right, man. Hey, guys, we're going to take a quick break here. I'm going to get some music in your ear, and when we come back, we're going to be talking to Adam about his actual career and what he's been doing recently. So stay tuned, and we'll be right back. right, guys, welcome back, and thanks for listening. This is Chase Wolf here, and I'm continuing my interview with Adam Bueller, owner of Paradox Pro Wrestling and professional wrestler, right now working the IWA Midwest scene. All right, so let's get into a little bit more of your wrestling career. You did mention, at the beginning, and it really carries over because that was one of the last things you mentioned, is you stayed over in the Ohio area and specifically HWA for a long time. You've now moved over to the Indiana, now Illinois, and Michigan a little bit. How did that move happen?
Well, the way that it happened, I was wrestling in Indiana, even though I was located in Ohio. I actually wrestled more in Indiana than I did in Ohio when I was living in Ohio. Basically, I got hooked up early in my career. I'd say I'd been wrestling maybe a couple of weeks to a month, maybe. And a really good friend of mine, he still kind of wrestles in the Cincinnati area by the name of Edgar Gonzalez. He actually got me hooked up with where he was wrestling at the time, which was EWF, Extreme Wrestling Federation, in Marion, Indiana at the time. So we would head over there. They would run weekly shows every Saturday. From there, it was just getting in contact with various people. So I started doing a couple more shows throughout Ohio and Indiana. Eventually, I moved out to Michigan. I haven't really done very much in Illinois. There's actually only 3 promotions, I think it is, that I've wrestled in Illinois, even though for most of my career I only lived about an hour away from it. But it was more or less just a gradual step, just getting more and more contacts from people who wanted to bring us out and use us on shows. From there.
Well, it sounds like, Matt, that you think that's been a positive move for your career. Would you say so?
I would say so, yeah. I mean, in some ways, yes, in some ways, no. Indiana really doesn't have the best places to wrestle at. That's to say that there aren't any very good ones. It's just, I would say it's about maybe a 2 to 10 ratio, 2 being places that are really good, worth checking out, that have some really good wrestlers on the shows, and the other 8 being, who decided to buy go they want to wrestle school, train all the buddies, and run a show. Unfortunately, there's a lot of places like that with some poorly trained guys, but I mean, Indiana's got some pretty good promotions in it. Time I moved here, I didn't realize that. I thought that there was just something everywhere. So when I moved up here, it was, I wouldn't say that I was disappointed, but it just kind of seemed like after I moved to Indiana, all these really awesome places in Ohio just started springing up, and maybe there the whole time I didn't know it. But it was I wouldn't say that I regretted moving, because on a personal level, it was the best decision that I've ever made, was moving to Indiana, where I moved to, for a lot of various reasons. But as far as wrestling goes, I don't know, probably wasn't the best decision, but I mean, I wouldn't have gotten in contact with certain people had I not come out here. So.
All right. Well, speaking of being in contact with people, you mentioned, some of the people that you started wrestling out with, and one of the groups that you were involved in was Main Street Youth, and I mean, that people don't know, that's kind of a big group and encompassed a lot of different people. Even Sami Callihan was part of that group for a time. How did that group come about, and do you think that helped you better yourself or better your contacts?
In some ways it did, and in some ways it didn't. The way that the group actually came about, it was self, Jake Oman, Tony X, and back then he wrestled as Cuba Valentino. We were doing the show in Kokomo, Indiana, for this youth center. It was called the Main Street Youth Center, and the locker room was actually in the basement of it. So we were just hanging out on this bench in the basement, and we looked at the wall. And it just says Main Street Youth really big on the wall, and we all just kind of. I ended up making a comment, and we all just kind of joked around about it. It's like, wouldn't that be like the most awesome name for a tag team? Like just like a cocky, good-looking heel tag team. Like it would just be such a fitting name for like that, and everybody thought it was kind of funny. And this is back during MySpace, so. The 4 of us, we went back and we all decided to put on our display names, just as a joke, we put Main Street Youth on on our display names next to our actual name on there. And a lot of people started asking us about it, and we just kind of made the joke of, well, no, we didn't even really tell anybody what it was. Everybody just kind of assumed that it was like this group that we had formed, and so a bunch of people started asking us, well, can we be in Main Street Youth? What do we have to do to be in Main Street Youth? And all this stuff. And it actually wasn't even a group. It was just this inside thing that we all put on our display name. So everybody assumed that it was a group, and I guess out of the assumption, it kind of became one. So we made it out to be like it was an exclusive thing that where nobody could get into it unless we really, really liked them. And I guess that pissed a lot of people off. So a lot of people decided to go and start their own groups, which I thought was really because ours wasn't even a legitimate group. So, and in some ways, I mean, it did better our contacts in some ways because when we started using it for wrestling, we became associated with that group. Because of Jake Young teaming as that group, going out a lot of places, it got a lot of recognition. But then at the same time, it also didn't because I don't know. A lot of people just assumed that we were a group of assholes, and that we just treated everybody like that we were better than them, which was never the case. So it hurt our contacts in some ways because everybody just assumed, oh well, that's that Main Street Youth. They're a bunch of douchebags, and nobody would really want to have any contact with us. And it didn't really help that a lot of these inside jokes had for various other reasons. We had these inside jokes also kind of hurt that a little bit because we ended up getting the reputation that we were all coke addicts, which, I mean, you know me and Jake. I mean,
yeah,
we're straight edge.
Oh yeah,
we've always been straight edge, and to knowledge, nobody else in our group has ever even been in the same room as anything like that. So, yeah, I remember there was actually one of our friends got pulled aside by somebody at the show. It was another wrestler's wife. Pulled him aside and said, you really shouldn't be hanging out with those guys. You know that, right? Like, you know the kind of stuff that they're into? So I always thought that was kind of funny.
That is actually quite funny because, I mean, you actually, use that as part of your gimmick. I mean, it wasn't, that you were kind of pulling off CM Punk or anything. It was just part of yourself, that you were straight edge. So that's actually a really funny story to me. Speaking of Main Street Youth, it's kind of broken off and disintegrated as far as on the wrestling scene. As far as, I mean, you guys used to work as tag teams under the name and everything that way, and it's kind of broken off. I mean, one of the people in the group, Ryan Epic, you're having an epic feud, no pun intended, with him right now in the Indiana area. Do you think that's for the better now?
I would definitely say so, yeah. I mean, we're having really good matches with each other. Those matches being put online is getting some more attention put on us. I think more so him than I, because he's more active and going out and trying to get on better shows and getting the attention of everybody else. Whereas me, I'm kind of, if it happens, if it doesn't, it doesn't. More or less that type of mindset. But I really wish I could have gotten a hold of a lot of the Price of Glory stuff that we did. But I mean, as far as the group itself goes, I mean, there was just Price of Glory. I mean, I love that place to death, but I mean, it kind of shoots like PSP made a mess out of the group because there was originally it was Big Swim and Scotty Young, and then me and Ryan Epic came out. We were Main Street Youth version 2, and then what happened there was Jake and I ended up leaving Price of Glory for a little bit. Ryan Epic and Scotty Young stayed. They became Main Street Youth version 3. Me and Jake came back. We became Main Street Youth version 4, and this was all within about a year or so, I think. So there was a lot of confusion with it. I think more or less we just we really weren't teaming on shows very often at all. At that time, it was pretty much just me and Ryan Epic doing shows together, mainly because we were feuding, all that time. But outside of just me and Ryan Epic too, there was Ryan Epic and Jake Oman had an amazing best of 5 series and various other promotions in the Midwest. Jake Oman and Scotty Young have had some really great matches too. Ryan Epic and Scotty Young have had great matches in Ohio and Michigan. So, I mean, the whole group, I mean, in some ways, I mean, it kind of sucks that, you know, it's not a team anymore because wrestling really doesn't have much in the way of teams. But at the same time, because of the group, more or less, there have been some really, really good matches that have come out of it between the four of us.
All right. Well, I don't want to, you know, bring us down, but I'm probably going to bring us down here a little bit. I wanted to talk about one person and one person only, real quick, as far as having a down point in this. One person that you were associated with, and many of your friends have been associated with, Matt Riot. Would you care to talk about him any?
Yeah, I wasn't as close to Matt as what a lot of people were. But I mean, Matt was a great guy. Every time I saw him on a show, I was always happy to see him there. He always cracked me up. I mean, he was like this gets tossed around a lot, but I mean, Matt was one of the best guys having him. I don't think he really got the attention that he really deserved to get. And I know he was capable of being on you know, going a lot than what he did. I know Sammy was trying to get him on some of the shows with him too. He was trying to help him get him a little further, but I remember when I found out about it, I was broken up over it. Not quite. I'll admit, you know, not quite so much as what I knew Sammy was and what a lot of the other guys I knew that were closer to him was. But I mean, it was a blow, not just to wrestling, but it was a blow to me. It was a blow to everybody who knew him. I mean, he was a fantastic guy. One of the fun guys I've ever been in the locker room with. And it sucks.
It definitely does, and I just want to give everybody a little bit of a reference here, because I'm sure most of the people listening probably know, but if you don't, Matt Riot was a great wrestler in the Midwest area and had moved over to Pennsylvania to start training with CZW, and in training, unfortunately, there was an accident and he passed away from that, and it was a big blow to everybody, including myself and yourself, and it's horrible what happened, but I definitely want to at least shed some light and talk a little bit about him, because he definitely was somebody who had the talent and could have been, you know, on the level of, say, a Sami Callihan or Drake Younger, and it's sad that somebody like that has been lost in our business. Let's pick up, you know, let's go to something a little bit more fun. I mean, you definitely had a lot of matches, and there's definitely some stuff online for people to see. If there was one match you were to pick out online for people to get the, say, full Adam Bueller experience, what match do you think it would be?
I would probably be a combination of two matches, actually. It was two matches I had about 2 weeks apart from each other, actually. One of them is online. The other I'm still working on getting put online. Both are matches with Ryan Epic. The first one was it was on the last Paradox Wrestling show, the Daniel Hodo Memorial show. It was me and Ryan Epic, and I would say, I mean, that's a really good one to have, because that's me and Ryan Epic more or less just, you know, doing what we do the best that we can do it. You know, we did a lot of lucha. We did a little bit of strong style, not necessarily a whole lot. I mean, we always work really, really well together, and I always think that we bring out the best in each other when we wrestle. Another match would be we wrestled in Revolution Championship Wrestling in South Bend. It was actually for the RCW heavyweight title, which I know is very ironic. It was Ryan Epic defending it, and it was my second time wrestling there. And it was actually the match that we did for Paradox Wrestling that got the match set up in RCW. A lot of the guys who were on RCW were at the Paradox Wrestling show as well, and they saw our match, and they wanted us to do it again for them. We didn't really do any lucha at all, or anything or you know, anything to kind of ooh and ah anybody. More or less, what we did was we just basically beat the shit out of each other. We hit each other about as hard as we could, as much as we could. Probably a good solid 20 minutes of us just, feeling like we absolutely hate each other. Aside from that, I mean, I guess if I had to throw anything else out there too, any of the stuff that I do in Price of Glory Wrestling, because I try to do a lot of people ask me, well, what's your gimmick? What do you do? Like, what's your more or less your character when you? And I tell people I really don't have one. I'm me when I wrestle. So, and POD is a pretty big reflection on it. I go out there. I'm goofy. I'm dumb. I'm just more or less just trying to make everybody laugh because that's how I am in my personal life. And I think that comes out the best in anything I do up in Price of Glory. So a lot of that stuff is worth checking out as well. If you go to the Price of Glory website, they're actually uploading every single match in order, one new match every single day. Some of the older stuff that I did is on there. Nothing that when I started, I guess, transitioning more into doing comedy isn't there quite yet. That's something to keep an eye on in the future.
All right, well, let's plug it a little bit. I mean, RCW, the match you had with Ryan Epic, I've seen that match. And you actually went, you mentioned you do a lot of comedy-type stuff. But the match that you had with Ryan Epic, you delivered a great promo before. And I've seen the gimmick with the coat hanger before. And I'm just asking you personally, did you kind of get that from Ian and Hardcore Harry?
I didn't actually. I had completely forgot that they had done that. Actually, the motivation behind that was honestly because, just before, I'm always trying to make people laugh, and just being stupid. That's my dumb sense of humor. So I'm looking around in the locker room, and I just kind of make a dumb comment to one of the guys in the locker room. I say, I'm just going to take a random object. And on every show I do from now on, try to get better at talking on the microphone, I suppose. Every show I do, before I go out, I'm just going to pick up a random object, whatever I can find, and I'm going to find a way to work this. I'm going to find a way to work this object into what I'm trying to say. And while I was back there, I just happened to see a coat hanger, so I grabbed it. And the goal was to go out there and try to figure out a way to explain why I brought a coat hanger to the ring. And that just sort of came out.
Oh, man. But it worked out really great. And I really loved the promo. And if anybody wants to see it, just go on YouTube, look up Adam Bueller, Ryan Epic, RCW. That will actually take them to your actual YouTube page, which is, if I remember correctly, X the Sickness X, right?
That's the old one, which is still up. It's got a lot of older stuff. Nothing really that I mean, it has some stuff on there that I'm out of, but it's also got some stuff on there that I kind of wish that I wouldn't have uploaded because I went into it with the mindset of I'm just going to upload everything I have, good or bad. I don't even care, just to have everything online. And I kind of wish I hadn't done that because going back and looking at some of the older ones, I've seen some matches on there that I kind of was like, probably shouldn't let people see that if I want to make people think I know what I'm doing. But I do have another one. I don't have as many videos on there as I would like to, but the other one is X Adam Bueller X, I believe, or something to that effect.
It can be looked up on YouTube. People can find it. It'll be easy to find, right? They just need to look up Adam Bueller. I mean, right?
Yeah.
So actually, let's let me see what we get here real quick. What are some of the matches from people and just people in general that the wrestling community and I know you know a lot of different people in the business. What are some of the names coming up in the business that you think people should be watching out for?
Ryan Epic, definitely. He's one of the most unique wrestlers in the Midwest. He's one of those innovative wrestlers in the Midwest. I mean, it's honestly a shame that more people don't know about him. Jake Oman is another one. Probably, if I had to say, probably the best unknown wrestler in the entire state of Indiana. Scotty Young, fantastic wrestler, has,
Definitely.
Yeah, very, very good. Really good old school wrestler too. He wrestles an old school style, but it's like a modernized old school style. It's really unique. Russ Jones, definitely one of my favorite people to relieve aggression with in the ring, more or less. He's built like a. Well, I mean, it's cliche to say, but he's built like a brick house, legitimately. I wrestled him one time and ran into him, and I got wind knocked out of me just running into him. Tony X, really good. His cousin Antonio Iquis, very good. Just a lot of Billy Rock students too. Trip Cassidy is one of my favorite guys to watch.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Remy Wilkins, Hollywood Court, Sue Jackson is very, very good. Just a lot of really, really good guys that a lot of people wouldn't necessarily know about, unless you go to a lot of the more local shows that in the area, more or less. So.
Well, you mentioned Russ Jones, and he's actually the champion of your promotion, Paradox Pro Wrestling, right now, is he not?
Yes, he is.
Very deserving of it. Who'd he beat in that tournament for the title?
The qualifying match to get into the tournament, he beat me. And then in the tournament itself, he went through Jefferville, and then in the four-way elimination finals, he beat Jimmy Shawlin, Sean Tyler, and it came down to him and Jimmy Jacobs, as a matter of fact, for the title. And he ended up getting the win, and he's the first ever Paradox Wrestling champion. Has yet to be able to defend it, but that is something that I'm working on very, very hard to try to make happen.
All right, well, hold that thought for a minute because we'll get talking about that in a few seconds. But there's one person I think you kind of skipped over a little bit that I kind of want to talk about. Another person who's wrestled for Paradox Pro Wrestling. And I really think he stands out a lot because he kind of has a gimmick that's working for him that not a lot of people have done on the indies, especially in recent years, and that's Jamie Eternal. Do you want to talk about him maybe a little bit?
Jamie Eternal I love the guy to death. Every time I see him on a show, I get excited that I get to hang out with him in the locker room. He's a really, really, he's got one of the most unique characters in wrestling. Like, the best way I can describe it is he's an 80s horror movie monster that's come to life, honestly. I'll be honest, I liked him a lot better with the mask because he's since unmasked, and he mostly just wrestles up in Michigan now. He doesn't go out quite as much. He was on the first IWA Midwest show, but just has one of the most unique looks. He's got a good size, and he's very, very unique. There's really nothing. There's not a lot of people out there like him.
All right, man. I told you to hold on to that thought about Paradox Pro Wrestling. We're going to take another quick break, and when we get back, we're actually going to talk about it a little bit. So hang on to your seats because I think you got a little bit of news that may be coming out. So we'll get talking to you about it in a minute here. Right now, we'll get back to a little bit of music, and we'll bring you back with Adam Bueller. All right, we're here talking with Adam Bueller, owner of Paradox Pro Wrestling and professional wrestler. Adam, you've recently been able to realize one of your dreams. You're running your own professional wrestling company, Paradox Pro Wrestling. You want to introduce people to Paradox a little bit?
Yeah. Paradox Wrestling was originally created to be the alternative for what was typically in the area in Indiana. Most specifically in the northwest part of Indiana. I'm not gonna mention anybody specifically, but living in that part of Indiana for 7 years. 6 years. Yeah, I lived there about 6 years. And seeing what wrestling was up there, at least in my specific area. I'm not saying Northwest Indiana entirely, but just where I was living specifically, there was just no good wrestling at all. The only places that there were that you could go see that you didn't have to drive over an hour to go see were I'm pretty sure you know where I'm going with this, but
yeah,
places that were not the most reputable places to go see, run by. I'm trying really hard not to just completely bury anybody or say anything really negative about anybody, but some less popular guys within the business, I guess you could say. So it was basically created as an alternative to that because I wanted to bring good wrestling, different wrestling to my area. And I thought if I'm going to get people to come see this, it's got to be different from everybody else. It's I can't just put up a flyer of a couple of wrestlers on it and just expect people to say, oh, well, that's different than what I saw here a couple weeks ago or a couple months ago or in the next town over or anything like that. So I wanted to basically have it. I basically wanted my company to have a gimmick, more or less, much like a wrestler would. I've always been a really big fan of comedy wrestling. Chikara, DDT in Japan, Osaka Pro, things like that. So I wanted to basically go, not necessarily in that exact direction, more or less, but I wanted to almost do kind of like a half and half, more of a inspired by type of thing, where I still wanted to be, the focal point would be on serious wrestling, of course, but I also still wanted to have more or less like comic relief, and not necessarily just people who, oh, well, that guy's a funny wrestler and he does funny things in the ring. Like I wanted to actually have a comedic aspect to the show itself, rather than just have a couple of comedic wrestlers. Comedic match types. I tried to have humorous show names. DVD covers I tried to have reflect on that as well. More or less, like the tagline on the website says, wrestling with a sense of humor. And that's more or less the direction I wanted to go with it.
Right, and I know you didn't really want to bury anybody, but I do think I should throw out one name here just to kind of give people an idea what you're talking about in the North Indiana, Michiana area. What really comes to my mind is Greg Valentine and his promotion. Although he does have some people on the lower card that are pretty cool, he's still the main guy there, and he's still doing the stuff that was done like 20 years ago, and it all looks really, really bad compared to the modern stuff. So, I mean, you're trying to bring an alternative to that, right?
Yeah, more or less. I mean, I want people to be able to come see a Paradox Wrestling show and be able to say, wow, that was a lot different than what I see on TV or what I saw at this show, or that was a lot different than what I expected it to be. But for that to be in a positive way, for people to see that show and be like, wow, that was really awesome. I can't wait to come see the next show and see what they're going to do on the next one. So, I wanted it to be, like a different type of fun show,
Right. You've actually been able to book some top people for your show. Jimmy Jacobs and the half man, half shark himself, Shark Boy, has been on there. Has that brought people in? Is that how you bring people in, and then you put out people like Russ Jones and Ryan Epic, and then use those names to bring people in? Has that helped you out?
It was not necessarily. I mean, I wanted to build it around. I wanted it to first have a local fan base first, because I mean, it's not gonna be an overnight thing. It would have to be a slow building process. So I wanted to make people familiar with the more local guys, the lesser-known guys, have an attachment to them first, and then when the bigger names come in, and I start announcing a match, it's like, oh wow, I'd really like to see, Russ Jones against Jimmy Jacobs. That would be a really, really good match. Or, Dustin Thomas and Shark Boy. That would be awesome too. More or less get excited about who those people are wrestling, not necessarily just that they're going to be on the show to begin with. Out of the shows I've done, we've only done 4 shows. I've only had the bigger names on 2 of those shows actually, and my biggest drawing show that I've done actually is sorry, motorcycles are very obnoxious. The biggest show that I had out of the 4, I actually promoted using only the smaller local guys that most people wouldn't necessarily be familiar with. And personally, I think it's the best show that I've done.
Well, I actually heard about Paradox Pro Wrestling before it was announced because we kind of talked about it a little bit. And when you originally pitched it, what I heard was a Chikara for the Midwest. Do you think you've been able to accomplish that?
In terms of popularity, certainly not. At least as far as the shows itself. I try to not necessarily quite go that far with it, but I wanted it to build it around. I didn't want to just be generic wrestler A, generic wrestler B. I wanted there to actually be, like in Chikara, a different type of wrestler. Where everybody has a gimmick that makes them stand out more or less. I guess in a less corny way, kind of like the early '90s WWF, where where you had all these different gimmicks. Where you had a model, you had a trash guy, you had a drill sergeant, like all this type of stuff. Like what Chikara is doing, but I guess more or less a less comic book cartoon type of thing. And I'm not saying that to bury Chikara or anything, because personally I love that stuff. I think that the way that they present their product is amazing. The way that they have their wrestlers, the type of wrestlers that they have, it's great. I love their shows. I try to watch it as much as I can, but I didn't want to necessarily go in quite that same direction. I wanted the idea to be the same, but not necessarily the presentation, more or less. I'd say in that aspect, as much as I've tried, I'd say that I've kind of done that. It's gone, I guess, less from the comedic wrestlers and the comedic stipulations. It's gone less from that and more toward, the actual wrestling with just a couple of funny things thrown into it, I guess. But I'm happy with the way that the shows have flowed together and the direction they've gone in and things like that. So, I'm my own worst enemy when it comes to creative ideas, just because, and any of my friends will tell you the same thing. Something that I think will be the funniest thing in the world, I'll assume that everyone has the same sense of humor that I do, which not many people do. The things that I think are really funny, the majority of people will think it's stupid. So there's a lot of things that I would have liked to have done differently that I'm really glad I didn't do. But more or less, I'd say that it's gone in the direction that I would have liked to have gone with it anyway.
All right. Well, it's been a while since you've actually run a show, but I've seen some activity on the Paradox website, which you can find at paradox-wrestling.com, that there may be a show happening soon. You want to fill us in a little bit on that?
Yeah. I'm trying to get some stuff together here in I'm living in Noblesville right now, which is close to Indianapolis. Trying to get some stuff set up down here. I've got a building in place. I'm just trying to get the funding behind it, which I'm currently working on right now. And as long as we can get the money behind it, then we're gonna be doing it again down here. So we've got we've got an idea of how we want the next show to go. We've still got a lot of things, a lot of unresolved issues from the last show that need to be straightened out. But if everything goes as planned, we should be seeing another Paradox Wrestling show and hopefully more consistent shows coming up in the future.
That's great. I mean, I plugged it already, paradox-wrestling.com. You can actually go there and you can buy all the DVDs from the shows, check them all out, and you know, if you get this going, there's going to be a lot of stuff there, and having, you know, those DVDs is going to definitely give you an insight into what's going on with Paradox Pro.
I'm sorry, did you ask something?
No, I guess not. I guess it was more a comment that I was trying to shill, you know. I'm just chilling here.
I spaced out a little bit for a second. I'm sorry.
That's all right, man. That's all right. No, I was just saying, you know, people can go to your website. They can buy merch. As far as Paradox is concerned, they can get the DVDs there. You make really nice DVDs. You want to talk about those a little bit, any?
Yeah. I'd like to think that I make pretty good DVDs. I personally make all the Paradox Wrestling DVDs. I've also done DVDs. I've done 2 DVDs for Jimmy Jacobs, which if you've ever gone to any shows that he's on and you've seen a best of compilation of Jimmy Jacobs, you know, more than likely I probably made one of those 2 or both of them, depending on which one you have. I used to make DVDs for NWA Underground. What else? I'm actually going to be hopefully doing the DVD for Indie Mania for IWA Midwest. And I mean, I do pretty good work. I you know, charge reasonable prices. So I mean, if anybody is in the market for anything like that, just head over to facebook.com/IndieRiffixDesigns. I've got a lot of samples of of my work as far as graphic design, DVD covers, websites, various things like that. So anybody looking for anything like that, just send me a message.
Well, let's talk about Indie-Rific Designs real quick. I mean, was that something that you had as a skill before you went into wrestling, or is that something that you said, you know, hey, I see people that need this, I should probably learn to do this and do this for them and make some extra money along the way?
It's kind of a little bit of both. I wouldn't say that I knew what I was doing. I wouldn't say I knew how to do all that before I got into wrestling. I thought I did, but I definitely didn't. It's something that I more or less kind of picked up and taught myself along the way. I mean, websites, I was okay at doing. Well, before I got into wrestling, I was okay at doing websites. I didn't really start getting good at doing websites and graphics and things like that, and DVDs especially, until I would start doing more for myself and my friends and things like that. And then I would have more people want me to do projects for them. And I mean, it's one of those things where the more you do, the more you learn, and the more you can do later on. So it's definitely something. There's a lot of people out there that are looking to have that sort of thing done, and just don't really know where to look. That type of information is more or less spread through word of mouth, I've noticed. So I mean, it's out there. I mean, you just got to look for it. And you know, like I said, facebook.com/IndieRifficDesigns, or just, you know, get in contact with me directly, Adam Bueller @yahoo.com, and you know, I'll get you set up, show you what I can do, and I mean, all I ask is that you spread the word for me. So,
hey man, you know, that's easy to do, especially with some of the good work that you've done. I mean, all people need to do is check out your own website for Paradox Pro Wrestling, or they can even check out the IWA Midwest website as well, correct?
IWA Midwest website and IWA Mid-South website, actually. So, yeah, both of those.
So, I mean, that's a good place. Anybody who's interested in getting any designs done, you don't just do, you know, websites. You don't just do videography. I mean, you actually do the graphics and everything as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I tend to overextend myself, I've noticed.
Hey, that happens, you know. I mean, I did that with photography and video editing, so I've been there, done that as well. So,
right.
Let's take another quick break, and I think the next thing, we're just going to have a little bit of fun here real quick, ask a few fun quick questions, and we'll wrap it up. So, one more quick break, one more bit of music, and we'll be right back. we're back. That's the last bit of music you're going to be hearing. We're just going to shoot some questions here, shoot the shit, as they like to say, and wrap it up, man. So, Paradox Pro Wrestling, one of the main show that people know is actually What a Horrible Night to Crown a Champion. And that comes from Castlevania 2, Simon's Quest. Was that something, I know for a fact that you're an avid gamer. Do you try to work that into your promotion at all?
I wouldn't necessarily say I try to work it in that much. I mean, a lot of the things I do, like graphically, a lot of things are inspired by that. Actually, for a future Paradox Wrestling show, one of the things I had planned was to do a Pokemon-themed type of show. So I had a lot of just various other ideas like that. But I try not to really incorporate that much into wrestling, just because a lot of that stuff can go over a lot of people's heads. And in fact, from what I've noticed, when I did the What a Horrible Night to Crown a Champion graphic and all the advertisements for the show and even the show name itself, I noticed went over a lot more people's heads than I thought it honestly would. So I don't know. I just assumed that video games, like old Nintendo video games, are universal. But I mean, and then maybe it were to a point, but I guess not to the extent that I took it to playing them well in my 20s. I guess there was a cutoff for a lot of that, and a lot of people just kind of put that out of their memories as they got older.
Well, I'm certainly not one of those people, and our listeners definitely aren't those people, because this is being done for the Game Facts Pro Wrestling board. So there's definitely that connection. I think that helps you out a little bit as well to get your name out here, because let's talk about one thing. I was talking to you a little bit earlier. You said you've been playing a lot of Skyrim recently. You want to talk about that any?
I've been trying to play it a lot more recently. When the game came out, I ended up renting it, played it nonstop for about a week. Really pissed my girlfriend off really bad. But yeah, I just got way into that game. Had to take it back, and I wasn't able to start picking it back up again until maybe about a month or so ago. And there had already been about 3 months that had passed where I couldn't play it at all. So I was completely lost in that weird funk where I was having to not only relearn what I was doing, but relearn the controls and all that, because I really didn't want to start over. And now I'm at the part where something happened. I can't go any further in the game without finding something that I can't find anywhere. I wouldn't necessarily say it's a glitch, more of just my dumb mistake, I think, and I actually have to start the game over anyway. Yeah, I've been trying to play that. I've always played a lot of Rock Band, and I don't really have as much time to play games as I would like. I used to be, played every game that came out, whether it was good or bad. But I don't know, more or less, I just haven't really been able to play as many games as I wanted to. I haven't really had the chance to play anything new that's come out. So I've been a little behind on a lot of that.
Well, I can definitely understand that. I've definitely been behind myself. Little known fact about you: you were actually a manager at GameStop. What was that like?
I wasn't a manager at GameStop. I worked at a GameStop for about 2.5 years. I liked it. It was, surrounded by one of my favorite things, for my job. So, it was pretty nice to do. I had fun there, just talking about video games all day. So,
well, speaking,
it was. What's that?
I said, speaking of wrestling and video games, are you a fan of the Botchamania series?
I love Botchamania. I'm one of those people where when I see something that's really funny on Botchamania, I have to show everybody. And I see a lot of things that are really funny on Botchamania, so I'm that guy who gets on everybody's nerves with it. Oh, you got to see this part. Oh, check this out. Oh, you see what this guy did. Oh, this is so funny. You got to see it. And a lot of people are to the point now where it's like, no, I don't want to see it. Don't worry about it. Yeah, it probably is funny. But yeah, I love Botchamania. It is one of my favorite things to watch.
Do you have a favorite episode?
I honestly couldn't tell you what my favorite episode is, because I don't remember them consistently enough since there's like over 200. I know I haven't seen all of them though. One of my favorite things that they do though is the not necessarily the CZW botches, but how they get into the CZW botches, where they take the Zandig promo and just the different ways that they have it spliced in and dubbed over certain things. It's one of my favorite. Like that's honestly lately what I've been watching Botchamania for is just to see how they're gonna incorporate that into that because it's now that it's different every time. Like, it almost brings me to tears half the time how like the ways that they present that.
Would you ever be offended if you ever found yourself on Botchamania?
I would not be offended if I saw myself on Botchamania, because it's I don't know if I did something that ended up on Botchamania, then as well, and I messed up. I can't undo it. So no, I wouldn't be offended at all about it. I would honestly think it was. I mean, I would be kind of upset with myself. I would look at that and think, oh man, I can't believe I messed that up so bad. But at the same time, too, I would also be like, oh, hey, did you guys check it? See, I'm on Botchamania. That's pretty badass.
Right. You know, speaking of funny stuff in wrestling, do you know of any good ribs that have been pulled off, that you've pulled off, been pulled off on you, or you've seen?
Oh, gosh, my memory is so bad. I would say moves I can't really think of anything cool that I've pulled off. Things that I've seen. A lot of the stuff Brian Epic does, like I said earlier, is just really cool. He's always coming up with like really cool ideas for things. One thing that he does that I particularly like is when somebody goes to throw a kick at him, he'll actually catch it, swing the leg, he'll just throw the leg down, and as their body is going down with the momentum of their leg, he'll actually bring his knee up and more or less knee them square in the face, which I think is really cool. A couple other things that I think, like probably my favorite move to watch that anybody does right now, AR Fox's finish that he does in the corner. I can't remember what it's called, but it's like that springing one-man Spanish fly gimmick. It is like one of the coolest things I've ever seen. It's so pretty.
Well, have you heard some of the rumors about an AR Fox video that has come out?
I have not.
I will advise you to possibly look up the rumors, but don't look up the video.
Okay.
I'm only, like I said, this is only rumors, so I can't really say too much. But that's what I've heard. Anyways, you know, speaking of, you know, like Paradox Pro Wrestling, you run Paradox Pro Wrestling now. There are a lot of people that are involved in wrestling that people really don't know the names of because they're not necessarily, say, a promoter or they're not a wrestler. One of the people that comes to my mind is definitely Mike Z. Is there anybody like that you'd like to give a shout out to?
Oh, Mike Z is my dog. I haven't seen him in a long time, but oh my God, I miss him so much. He's like there's actually a graphic that somebody had made. There was a high school picture of me floating around, and a picture of Mike Z, and somebody put the two together, and you would think that we were like brothers. We look that much alike from back then. Aside from that, I mean, there's a lot of guys in Michigan that you know I just love to death. Jimmy Sholin, Keith Cream, Jamie Eternal, Sean Tyler, Joseph Schwartz, Game Boy Max Morrison. You know, guys in Indiana, Trip Cassidy, Hardcore Harry, love that guy to death. Guys in Ohio, you know, Hooks, Mark G, Scary Gary, Brutally Handsome, Tom Bellman, and Donnie Red. There's just Ed Gonzalez. Just there's an endless list of people that I would love to I guess shout out to more or less.
All right. One person that I kind of want to pick on a little bit is Hardcore Harry. Have you ever really had to wrestle Hardcore Harry?
I wrestled Hardcore Harry once in Kalkaska, Michigan for Mr. Chainsaw Wrestling, and I stabbed him in the forehead with a fork.
Well, the one thing I kind of want to get on about Hardcore Harry was that name implies more than one thing. When we mentioned the Harry part, did that bother you at all?
Not really. I mean, there's always been, there's a lot of things that I would really like to do with Harry, just because he has so much body hair that I think would be just really funny to do. I remember there was one time for in Price of Glory, I think it was, where he was trying out for the Cream Team. I think it's been some time ago, but I'm trying to remember. It was one of the first times he was up there, and he came out with his shirt tied up above his stomach, and I think he had a boa that he was coming out with, and I tried to get him to shave a heart into his body hair, but no, like it's nothing that I have a problem with. I mean, everybody loves the guy to death, and I think that the excess hair it makes him stand out, and in wrestling, if you don't have anything that makes you stand out, then you don't have anything at all. So.
Well, speaking of hardcore, as far as nicknames, you had a match with Steve Stone and Hardcore Craig. And I remember after the match, we were kind of talking back to each other. And one of the things you mentioned to me was when you went into the match, you thought that, having the nickname Hardcore Craig, he was going to be the stiff guy to work. But it ended up being Steve Stone. Do you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah. Steve Stone beat the shit out of me and Jake. Hardcore Craig, the stuff that he was doing didn't tickle, at all. But yeah, Steve Stone, I thought for a while that I pissed him off beforehand or something like that. He hits really hard. And yeah, Hardcore Craig was, like I said, it didn't feel great, but yeah, I was expecting him to be the hard hitter between the two, and it was very surprising.
Has there been any other experience where you expected to be wrestling somebody and they'd wrestle one style and they wrestled a completely different that you can think of outside your head outside of that?
Not necessarily. Every time, everybody that I work with, I do a pretty good job of figuring out, what type of stuff that they like, how they wrestle more or less. If I haven't seen them before, I try to get there early and watch some of the stuff that they're practicing in the ring, some of the motions that they do in the locker rooms themselves. I try to get as much of an idea of how that person wrestles as possible. There's not really anybody that I've their style of wrestling that I've been thrown off by while wrestling them. But there have been a few times where I've been hit a little harder than I expected to be hit by certain people. One person that comes to mind was a show I did up in Michigan in Niles. I was wrestling a younger guy. His name was AJ Picante, and he gave me one of the hardest headbutts I have ever had in my entire life.
Oh wow! That's pretty awesome. Considering like you said, you've wrestled people like Russ Jones. I mean, that's pretty special to have that come down for you.
Yeah.
You mentioned you play a lot of Rock Band, man. Is there any one song on Rock Band you love to play?
Not necessarily any one song. There's a certain number. There's a small number of songs that I have to play every single time I play it. I've been trying to play on expert more and more lately, and I'm getting a lot better at it. For the most part, I just played on medium with the speed increase. But the songs that I try to play, that I play every time I turn the system on, is What a Horrible Night to Have a Curse by the Black Dahlia Murder. I absolutely love that song in the game. There's You Ain't No Family by I Wrestle the Bear Once. It's probably my favorite band right now. I know they just recently uploaded Raining Blood by Slayer. I haven't got a chance to download it yet. I love the Between the Buried and Me songs. Just anything that changes up really fast like that. I I get into a lot in that game. Abraxas of Filth by Cephalic Carnage, Hammer Smash Face by Cannibal Corpse. Those are my favorite ones that I play. I usually play those a couple of times every time I play it.
Hey, man, you know, you do play a lot of games. Do you want to throw your gamer tag out?
I could. Honestly, there wouldn't be much sense in adding me on there because I don't go online at all. The only time I really go online is just to download or play downloadable content for Rock Band. I really don't talk to anybody or play games with people online. But if anybody wants to add me on there anyway, just Adam Bueller, all one word.
All right. Well, speaking of video games and online and stuff, I remember back in the day when GTA 4 came out, and we used to play online a lot of times, man. You got any good memories from that?
GTA 4 is probably the funnest game to play online with people. It's just so many fun things that I've seen happen in that game, just messing around with people. Like, the game is so freaking chaotic. Like, there's with people shooting at you or people trying to run you over with cars. It's like you're never really safe in the game at all. And it's just there's so many fun things that happen in it. Like, just when you think you're about ready to get like run over, you just so happen to shoot the guy through the windshield in the face, and vice versa. It's such a badass game. It's one of the funnest experiences I've had playing a game online.
Are you looking forward to GTA 5?
Always. I've been in love with the GTA series ever since the first one on PlayStation, actually.
Oh, you played it since back then, man. That's old school. I mean, what was the how did you like it when they transitioned from the top down, old school like Super Nintendo type view to the 3D and GTA 3 and Vice City?
At first, I really didn't like it at all. I actually kind of hated it at first. But then the more I played it, I didn't really get into 3 very much, and Vice City I didn't really like, but San Andreas I just absolutely loved. Like, that game just completely consumed me when I got to playing it. And then, of course, GTA 4 I just loved to death. And then for those two, I tried going back on the original 2 and playing the overhead ones, and it just I can't do it anymore. They're just, to me, they're just unplayable. They haven't aged very well at all.
Are you looking forward to a fart button in GTA 5?
To a what?
To a fart button.
A fart button.
You remember the fart button from GTA 2?
Yeah.
We need to get that back, man.
Doing that?
No, they haven't. Would you want them to incorporate something like that?
I wouldn't care, honestly. Like, it was funny, but I mean, I'm not 15 anymore, so I guess it's not that big of a deal to me anymore.
Well, speaking of that same genre of sandbox games, have you played any of the Saints Row games?
I have. I didn't like the first one at first because I just thought it was a big GTA ripoff. And then I started getting into it a little bit, but not really that much. And then a friend I worked with was way into Saints Row. The second one came out, he was real excited about it, and I would always be like, oh, there's no point in getting that game. It's going to be the shits because the first one wasn't that great. And then I ended up picking that one up. I loved it. I thought it was awesome. Went back and played the first one again. I thought it was a lot better than I originally thought. Tried picking up the third one, and it was fun up until about a few hours into it when the game just got horribly repetitive. And I just stopped having, like, it's one of the few games that, like, I just stopped having fun playing.
Well, we mentioned before, What a Horrible Night to Crown a Champion, Castlevania 2. Are there some old school games that you still play a lot?
Yeah, there are actually quite a few that I still play a lot. Contra, I play constantly, the old original Nintendo Contra. I actually went back and tried to set a goal for myself, which I came close to doing. I wanted to get through Contra in its entirety without dying and without having to use the 30 lives cheat. Came pretty close, actually. Got to about midway through stage 7 without dying a single time, without using any cheats of any kind. And
wow.
I can't do it. It's one of those things where, like, you the only way to do it is to just play it constantly. and just know all the patterns and know what's coming from where and how to react. And aside from that, the original Double Dragon I play a lot still. A game that not a lot of people are familiar with, and I'm not a big fan of RPGs at all, but I do absolutely love this game. It's Star Tropics. I absolutely love the game to death. Other than those, let's see. There are a few that I do still go back and play. Mario 3, I still play every now and then, but not really quite that much. Not really a lot of Super Nintendo games I go back and play. Sometimes I'll go back and play Super Fire Pro Wrestling X on Super Nintendo.
Those were the days, man.
Yep. The original Pro Wrestling for Nintendo. Most of the games I go back and play are original Nintendo games.
You mentioned like Contra as being like one of those games that you really like a hard game that you really tried to get through, and
yep.
If I can mention maybe
Mega Man 3, I forgot about that.
Oh yeah. Well, I was gonna go towards the Ninja Gaiden section, the old school Ninja Gaiden. Man, have you played any of those?
Not really that much on Ninja Gaiden. A little bit, but not that much.
I definitely would say, man, if you want to challenge, those are the games. I'm sitting here, I'm looking at my NES collection right now and staring them right in the face. So that just kind of popped in my head. Another old school game. You ever play Gauntlet?
Never. I think I played it, but I never really got into it that much.
Any other really hard games you can think of beside Contra that you really like have tried to like beat like they were meant to be beaten?
Mega Man 3 is very, very hard to do without cheating. Really, any of the Mega Man games.
Definitely, I can definitely agree with that. I actually, I had the actual all 5 Mega Man games for my NES for a while back, and I actually just sold them and picked up the anniversary collection for GameCube. And I've been enjoying that a lot, so it's been fun getting back into those type of games. Other than Star Tropics, is there another old school game that maybe a lot of people might not have heard of that you'd recommend?
I'm not really sure. I think Star Tropics is really one of the only ones I can really think of.
All right, man. Anything else you'd like to plug before we close this up, man?
No, I just everything that we kind of touched up on, graphic design, DVDs, that sort of thing, because, I got to eat, so, definitely, anybody interested in any of that stuff, then get in touch with me. Keep an eye out for Paradox Wrestling. Definitely show support to Price of Glory Wrestling in Coldwater, Michigan, IWA Midwest in Bellevue, Illinois. There's a few others. Infinity Pro in Bloomington. They're actually just coming up this Saturday. They're doing a doubleheader with CZW actually. So that's going to be a really big show coming up. But yeah, just keep an eye out for Ryan Epic, Jake Oman, Russ Jones, Scotty Young, Trip Cassidy. All those guys, they're all very, very great talents, all well-deserving of making it to the next step. Definitely keep an eye out on some of that stuff. So, and yeah, I'd say that should about cover it.
All right, man. It's been fun. I've enjoyed it. I hope you've enjoyed it as well. And we'll catch everybody next time on Behind the Guardrail. Thank you.